would be great.
Joel, are you ready?
I think we're good.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, everybody. Well, folks, it is 8:31. I will call us to order and welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time this morning for our committee chairs meeting. We'll get a preview of our board meeting later this month, and immediately following, Regent Burdine will call our audit committee meeting to order. And just a reminder, of course, as you heard, we are being live streamed, we are being recorded, and all of this will be archived on the TBR website. Before we begin and I call on the Chancellor, I do want to introduce our new regents. The appointments the governor has made recently, and they've had their confirmation hearing just last week, and did, of course, extremely well there. We had one housekeeping change, so to speak, with a redistricting change. With Greg Duckett's departure and the change in lines, Regent Powers is now in the 9th Congressional District, so one quick change there. And we are now joined by Regent Shane Hooper, who lives in Shelbyville. Regent Hooper is the president and CEO of the Shelbyville Bedford County Partnership, brings us a wealth of economic development and workforce experience, moved up here from Tupelo, Mississippi, but is no stranger to Middle Tennessee. He is a graduate of Lipscomb University and also serves on their board. We are finally giving some company to Regent Burdine. You'll be pleased to know that Regent Hooper is a former Marine, Miles. So you've got company.
We got to talk, Shane. Simplify.
Simplify.
There you go. There you go. You two can never sit together. And in addition, he has other extensive higher ed experience, having served for 9 years in Mississippi on their Institutions of Higher Learning Board, which, of course, as we all know from having the universities in our own system just a few years ago, is a significant lift. Shane Hooper, welcome. And what else would you like for this group to know about us? We're anxious to meet you in person at the end of March.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm looking forward to working with everyone. I knew that we had another Marine on the board, and I'm looking forward to getting to spend some time with you. And you're right, we'll make sure that we sit together. But I really do look forward to working with everyone. As was mentioned, the time on the IHL board I think is going to be a great foundation for working on this board as well. The great news about this board is that we don't have, for example, Mississippi State and Ole Miss competing for time and space and funds and everything. So I'm looking forward. I think this experience is going to be just a little bit different. And my wife pointed out that we also don't have the football teams that go along with that. So a lot of the D1 sports drama that goes along with sports teams that we won't have to deal with here. But anyway, I look forward to working with everyone and look forward to seeing you guys in person at the SOAR Awards.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And speaking of Regent Green, who previously served in this seat, Mariah just told me this morning that she plans to join us at the SOAR Awards and also at the board meeting. And I know everyone will look forward to seeing her again. And she and Regent Hooper, I hope, are getting together soon and getting to know each other. So they need to know each other for all kinds of reasons, not to mention they live in that same great part of Middle Tennessee. So welcome, Regent Hooper. This will be a great experience for you and for us. We're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regent Todd Kessner, I hope, is still on the line. He, of course, is filling that 7th Congressional District seat once held by Regent Hatch. Todd has a great career in business, having served or currently serving as Executive Vice President of Corporate Development at Brookdale Senior Living, the largest senior living community company in the country. He had previous experience in American Retirement Corporation, which really was one of the leaders in senior housing and senior care. So he brings tremendous business acumen to us from his years at Brookdale. He is active in the community, a native of Louisville, but as Phil Bredesen used to say, he got here as quickly as he could by coming to Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, and serves on the advisory board for Lipscomb's MBA program. And he too has an MBA from the University of Louisville. Regent Kessner is no stranger to public service either, having served on the Williamson County Commission fairly recently. So Todd, what am I missing about you, and welcome?
You've pretty much covered it, but I'm honored to have the opportunity to be able to contribute. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a strong believer in both education and workforce development. So looking forward to it. So good morning,
Excellent.
everybody.
Thank you, sir. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the end of the month. And then finally, Kyle Spurgeon is our third new regent. He had a longstanding commitment from today, so he won't be here this morning. But Kyle knows our system well, having served as president and CEO of the Jackson, Tennessee Chamber. Before that, he was with the Jackson Energy Authority, and he's also worked at the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development as their marketing director. So Kyle brings a ton of energy and knowledge in this space. He's a graduate of Murray State University, just across the line from us, of course. But we welcome Regent Spurgeon as well. And again, I know we'll all look forward to having time with these three at the end of the month. We have started their orientation process, just so the board knows. We did a meeting here in early February, and then they have another scheduled meeting Thursday to do some deeper dives with our vice chancellors. And then again, of course, a very successful confirmation hearing the other day. So there is a fourth new regent who could not be with us today, and that's Bob Smith. Dr. Smith is the interim director at THEC with the departure of Emily House at the end of the year. We will see him also at the end of the month. He's been interim chancellor at UT Martin, came to Tennessee after serving as president of Slippery Rock University up in Pennsylvania. So I know chancellors met with him several times, I know, to date, and we'll all look forward to benefiting from his institutional knowledge, his service as a university president, and now his knowledge of Tennessee. So with that, let me pause. Chancellor, before we call the roll, do you have any announcements this morning?
Yes, good morning and welcome again to our newest board members. We are so pleased to have you on this board, and hope that you will find this as rewarding and as exciting as we think it is. So congratulations to you on a successful hearing with the committee, and you did a wonderful job there. I do have just 3 items that I would like to bring the board up to date on this morning quickly. The first having to do with our TCAT Memphis presidential search. As you know, Dr. Rayner announced his retirement, and February 28th was his last day. Dr. Jeff Sisk is now serving as our interim president there. The board, the search committee, being chaired by Emily Reynolds and our regents Nisha Powers and Mark George serving on the committee, have met and selected those candidates that will be interviewed. Virtual interviews are being held later this month, with on-campus interviews scheduled for April 4th, with the expectation that we will bring a name to you to vote on and have this new president in place by July 1st. I'd also like to let you know that Blue Oval City is moving along very, very well. We're very pleased that we are pouring foundations there at the site. The weekly meetings on the campus construction continue, with Heath, Jeff, and Dick Tracy being on those calls. We are also continuing to meet with Ford and SK regarding the equipment that needs to be in the building, and redefining a little bit of the space because Ford has decided to pull the ding, dent, and paint repair process back into the plant. So that freed up a little bit more space that we'll be using for some of what SK needed. And then also to talk for just a moment about this historic budget that you are all well aware of, was sent out to you. Alicia did a great job of doing a summary on the budget. I wanted to let you know that we are still working with legislators to get them to approve and push this forward. The operating funding, if you'll recall, in that there is $16.2 million in operating funding and just over $17.5 million going toward partial funding of the 5% system-wide salary pool. And I do want to point out again, this is based on our outcomes funding formula for higher education. So that is why that extra dollar is in there. And then the capital funding request of right at $1 billion being in the budget. That will cover 29 projects that will be in the TCAP master plan. There's also $50 million proposed for 39 capital maintenance projects across the system, which includes 15 community colleges and 24 TCAP projects. There's also a line item for Blue Oval City equipment at $9.5 million, and if you will recall, that was not included when the original budget was put forward because we didn't know what the equipment would be. So we waited until this year to ask for that amount. And then an additional $1.14 million for our correctional education investment. It is moving through smoothly at the moment. Kim and her team, myself, and others are continuing to meet with legislators. We have a meeting this afternoon with the speaker, the budget again, to try and steward it through the process. So, Madam Chair, that is all I have to report on this morning, but did want to give those 3 updates before we jumped in.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Let's move now to the roll call. And to Regents Hooper and Kessner, this will seem a little cumbersome, but when we meet remotely, these are the required steps, so bear with us. With that, Secretary Perry, would you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with TCA 844-108C3, there are 2 questions that need to be answered by Regents for the record. First, can the Regent simultaneously hear and speak with others participating in the meeting? And second, is the Regent alone in the room? If the answer to both questions is yes, the Regent can simply answer yes to both questions. Anyone who is not alone should identify any other people present in the room with the Regent. When I call your name, please answer these 2 questions. Governor Lee. Regent Apple.
Here and yes to both questions.
Regent Burdine.
I'm present and yes to both questions.
Regent George.
Here, yes to both questions.
Regent Gill. And he is not able to be with us this morning. Commissioner Hatcher. Regent Hooper.
Present and yes to both questions.
Regent Kastner.
Present and yes to both questions.
Regent Long. And he's not able to be with us this morning. Regent Powers.
Here and yes to both.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Here and yes to both.
Commissioner Schwinn. Regent Shelton.
Thanks to Ms. Mariah, I am here and yes to both questions.
Regent Smith. Regent Spurgeon. Regent Barlin.
Here and yes to both.
Regent Wamp.
Here and yes to both.
And Regent White.
Here, yes, and yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your board is assembled.
Very good. Thank you. The next step in this, as you know, is our affirmation that we do have a necessity to meet electronically. As we know, we've determined this is the most efficient way and most economical way for us to conduct business in a timely way and conduct this review prior to the quarterly meeting of the board on March 30. Given that this necessity to meet electronically is a non-controversial and a routine item, I would propose that this be adopted by unanimous consent. Anyone who would prefer to have individual votes on the necessity to meet electronically, by all means, feel free to object, and we will conduct a roll call vote. But if there is no objection, the necessity to meet electronically is adopted. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the necessity is adopted, and I thank you very much. We thank the Chancellor again for a great update. It's fun to hear that the foundations are being poured at Blue Oval City and all the good work going on around this historic budget, as you put it. So let's build on the Chancellor's report and turn to Executive Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick, for an update on external affairs. And I know she and the team are busy right now. Kim?
Yes, well, thank you, Vice Chair Reynolds, and good morning to everyone. Yes, this is the busiest time of the year for the Office of External Affairs. We are preparing for our wonderful SOAR event that we all love so much. Chancellor had a wonderful idea this year, and we are going to have a patriotic theme. So everyone, please wear your red, white, and blue. We will also be talking about the great state of Tennessee as well during that ceremony. Also, in the fundraising department, Chris Perkins is working like a busy bee, raising funds to help support this event, and we're very proud of him. Matthew and team, Carol Tomlinson, are all working very hard again towards SOAR. Matthew's team is preparing documents for all of us that have to do with working through this legislation that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. But I do want to thank that government relations team we have, Patrick, John, Lauren, Jamil, our intern, and Brian Laps helping. They are all working so hard and very proud of their efforts. As Chancellor mentioned, we are working toward securing that capital funding for TCATS. We are meeting with members of finance committees in both House and Senate, other members as well. Our presidents are working very hard to contact the members of their delegations to solicit that support for these capital projects, and we will continue to work all the way through until that very final vote. Committees actually are beginning to close, believe it or not. They are moving very quickly in the General Assembly. A lot of bills that are not gaining support are going away this week. There's a terrible thing that it's called Kill Bill Week. Also in the Senate, on April 24th, April 24th is the goal as far as shutting down and being finished. Now, whether that happens or not, we do not know, but that at least is the goal on the Senate side. We're seeing lots of bills that have to do with promise, middle college, financial aid. There are weapons bills. In just a moment, John, if you want to queue up, we will have John Williams go through those particular bills that we are following. And John is probably going to show up on Patrick's computer, and that's absolutely fine, John. When John goes through these bills, Patrick and I, along with Brian, will join in with John if you all have any questions on specific legislation. So, John, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. McCormick, and thank you, Madam Chair. We have a quick selection of bills that we're tracking. There were about 1,500 filed this session. We're tracking many of those, but wanted to highlight a few of those this morning for you. And like Dr. McCormick said, please let us know if you have any questions as we go through. And the other caveat is things are moving very quickly. So things probably today, some of these bills today might change or move forward, that type of thing. So I'll keeping close track of that. Senate Bill 89, House Bill 29, that one's by Senator Hensley and Representative Sapicki. What it would do, it would allow four-year public institutions to offer remedial or developmental coursework. Currently, the statute says that four-year institutions shall not offer remedial or developmental coursework unless they do that in coordination with two-year schools, and the two-year schools offer that coursework. This would allow four-year institutions to offer developmental or remedial coursework on their own. Senate Bill 349, House Bill 597, that's by Senator Campbell and Representative Powell. The original bill required TBR to offer entrepreneurial programs at all of the colleges in the TBR system. We worked with the sponsors of this bill on an amendment for that, and it would narrow it down to allowing us to offer those types of programs through our eCampus platform or through the workforce development side. Colleges would still be able to offer those programs if they wanted to, but this legislation would require us to offer that through those eCampus and workforce development opportunities. Senate Bill 364, House Bill 348 by Senator Massey and Representative Lafferty. This is one that we saw last year and was brought forth through a TISL student who is now interning in Senator Massey's office. It would allow students who graduate from high school to have a 16-month window to enroll in college and still be eligible for the Tennessee Promise Scholarship, kind of mirrored after the Hope Scholarship and the window that they have. So giving them a little bit of a gap between high school and actual enrollment. Senate Bill 404, House Bill 391 is another one we saw last year. It is by Senator Hensley and Representative Sapicki. It would require TBR to develop and administer a 2-year pilot program to award grants to students in eligible workforce training programs. So those are short-term programs that are not otherwise eligible for state or federal aid. This one passed through the education committees on both sides last year, but didn't end up getting funding once it moved into finance. We're hoping this one will move forward and get past the finish line this year to give those students in those short-term programs some financial aid. Senate Bill 551, House Bill 448 by Senator Lowe and Representative Davis is related to public comments at public meetings. And so the bill would require a period of public comment, but allows a public board to take reasonable restrictions to that those comment periods. And then the public notices for those public comment periods would have to require instructions for a person who wanted to give public comments at a meeting. So centered around kind of giving people the opportunity to speak at meetings, public meetings. Senate Bill 567, House Bill 519. That one is by Senator Rose and Representative White, and it would allow more tech to be eligible to receive the Wilder-Nafee Reconnect Grant and the Wilder-Nafee Technical Skills Grant. That one is moved to the lottery calendar in the House, where all the bills that deal with lottery funds go. So it'll be taken up, I think next week is when they're going to be looking at the lottery calendar. It's Senate Bill 816, House Bill 1385. That's by Senator Hensley and Representative Reagan. What that would do, it defines intent to go armed, including on college campuses, and it defines intent to go armed as carrying or wearing a weapon with premeditation and forethought to commit an infamous crime. So kind of redefining for criminal statute purposes intent to go armed. Senate Bill 817, House Bill 1376 is called the Tennessee Higher Education Freedom of Expression and Transparency Act. It does a number of things, but it deals with the divisive concept statute that have been passed over the past couple of years. It would create a process for a student or employee to file a report of a violation of the Divisive Concepts Act, and then requires posting of that report on the college website. It prohibits bias and favoritism in the use of campus facilities, so student groups, that type of thing. Requires a public database of course syllabi to be posted on college websites. And then for employees who have DEI responsibilities in their job description, they would be required to allocate a portion of their time to working with Pell eligible students. So it does a number of things, but those are some of the highlights from that one. Senate Bill 827, House Bill 977 by Senator Hensley and Representative Warner. This is another piece of legislation related to weapons. This one would remove the restrictions for the criminalization of carrying handguns and other firearms on college campuses, but it would specifically permit adults to carry mace, pepper spray, those types of things on college campuses. Senate Bill 834, House Bill 1445. It's the one that's being called the TikTok bill. It's Senator Lundberg and Representative Faison. There has been an amendment adopted on this one that narrows the scope of it, but it would prohibit a college from allowing anyone to use the public Wi-Fi network to access a social media platform that is based in China. So trying to get at TikTok, and then there is another app that they're looking at. Senate Bill 842, House Bill 1075. That one is the dual enrollment grant. So last year, the legislature expanded dual enrollment grants for students at TCATs to be able to begin getting those grants their freshman year of high school. On the community college side, this would bring it down to the sophomore year. It's still a junior year, so this would lower that to sophomores for those students. Senate Bill 968, House Bill 1114. That's one we've been working on with Senator Powers and Representative Lafferty, and it's to get at students who graduated high school during the COVID pandemic. So this would allow students who graduated in 2020 and 2021 to be able to get access to the Tennessee Reconnect grant 2 years early. So they could get access to Reconnect at 21 instead of age 23. So a little bit early access for those students who may not have enrolled during the pandemic. Senate Bill 1040, House Bill 1115, that would authorize THEC to require a governing board of a public institution or a college to terminate an on-campus or off-campus academic program. Senate Bill 1331, House Bill 1124 by Senator Bailey and Representative Sherrill. That's another open meetings bill, similar to the one I discussed before, but this one requires a governing body to provide an opportunity for public comment if proper notice is given by the person wanting to give that comment. So less restrictions on that one. And then the last three, the three we're most excited about, as Vice Chair Reynolds mentioned, the Senate Education Committee confirmed our 3 new regents on Wednesday of last week. And then last night, the full Senate approved this on their consent calendar. So we're very excited about those 3. But those are all the ones that I have on my list for this morning.
And we're excited to say those confirmations were unanimous.
That's great.
I know that's a lot to digest.
Yeah, Danny has her hand up.
Okay.
I just have a question, John, and this is back on the bill that I think Massey, can't remember who else is doing it, but it's about the extension, that gap year that's allowed for Tennessee Farms. I just want to mention this, and you may or may not know this, but I ran into, I was trying to help a student that wanted to, go to college, blah, blah. But what happens, he is LDS, which is a Mormon, and they are required to do that 2-year thing. And we just barely miss it. So we have a group of students that are not eligible because of their requirement, in terms of their religion. And that may or may not affect us very much here. But I did run into that. And I was so frustrated to think, wow, I hate that. So just, I don't know, something for you to think about and see. Maybe we research and see if that's a number that matters, or every student matters, of course. But I did find it, sort of a little sad on their behalf.
And on that, for students who go into the military after high school, those types of things, there are waiver processes. So a student can reach out directly to THEC to seek a waiver. So that may be a possibility for a student who has a religious obligation after high school.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else questions on this extensive report? Best news ever on our 3. Thank you. That's great that moved through last night. So, but anything else? As John said, he gave us a lot of information in a short period of time.
Emily, I just want to say congratulations to Kim's husband, Gerald, for having a building named after him at Chattanooga State. Very proud of him.
Thank you so much. We're very excited about that. It's a wonderful sign. I can't remember who said it, but I think it was Chairman Hazelwood that she said, my goodness, the sign is so large I could almost see it from the airport when we come in. So it's a large sign. So yes, we're so thankful to everyone and to Chattanooga State as well.
I called him and congratulated. He was very, very humble about it.
Yes, he is. And he's doing great. So, well, that is all we have, Vice Chair Reynolds. Unless there are further questions, we will be reporting out to the presidents as well. And as John mentioned, this is our list today. The list will look completely different the next time we show that to you. So, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, John and Patrick and your team for all you guys are doing. And to layer on to Miles's comments, yes, it is a large sign, but it is a well-deserved large sign. And it was a beautiful ceremony that day at Chattanooga State to honor Gerald and the McCormick family. So a very special day. It was fun to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys, let's move on now to academic programs or academic policies and programs and student life. And with that, I'll turn to Dr. Lemming, who has an update for us on the implementation work going on around our customer relation management software system.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. Good morning. Those of you that were at our fall retreat will recall that we did an overview of all of our student success technologies that we are trying to implement at the system level. And so today I'm going to give an update on one of those particular technologies, the CRM. Next slide here. Those of you that don't know what a CRM is, it's a customer relationship management system. And it refers to how we interact with customers. So in our case, it's prospective learners. And what it does for our institutions is it organizes and centralizes the communication and the information that those learners provide to us so that we can help them through the enrollment process. The system allows our campus staff to have a wide range of analytics through dashboards so that we can actually track where the student is in the enrollment process. And also allows us to do additional outreach, future engagement that is customized, individualized for that student. I have some examples today that I want to show you from some schools, but before I do that, I wanted to give an update of where we are with our implementation at the community colleges. When we reported last fall, we didn't have as many schools that were ready to go. We are happy to see that so many now are on board. So we have 7 who have signed the contract for Slate and 5 others that are interested. We have 1 institution using the other platform, Recruit, which is an Ellucian product. But at this point, all of our community colleges do intend to launch the Slate product. They are having monthly calls to think about, as a community, how they support each other in this implementation. And then you may hear in future reports our use the word Axiom, which is another software that we need to use in order to connect this platform with our student information system banner. And that's going to be really important as we think about moving forward, how students fill out their application, and that information is directly imported into our student information system. So here's an example of what Nashville State has created and many of our institutions are developing. It's just a simple request for information form. So if someone goes to their website, is curious about the institution, they can enter this information and then it's entered into our Slate product, which allows us again to do that additional outreach to students. Some of the other things that Nashville State has created, I'm going to try to get the slide to advance, there we go, is an appointment scheduling system for their Welcome Center. So if a student's looking to come to campus, they can go to this website and it gives them information and also a link to schedule an appointment with a staff member. We also have this available for our TCATs, which I'll show you an example of that in a minute as well. We also have the ability for students to submit some of their paperwork electronically. So in the past, it might have been mailed or it might have been sent by email. There's a way now that they can upload maybe a copy of their driver's license, transcripts, having their counselors at the schools do that for them potentially. So this again streamlines the process for students to be able to go in and submit information for their application directly to our institutions. So for the TCATs, we're doing this work centrally through the system office. We have a full-time staff member that works on behalf of the TCATs. So far this year, this fall into spring, they're all using an inquiry form like I just showed you with Nashville State. They all have tour schedules available where students can select times to come to campus. They all have event registration and communication tools available to them. Many of them are doing that for group information sessions or FAFSA workshops. And they also have the ability to do texting. So 15 of our campuses are using Slate now for texting to students. Our immediate goal is that we will continue to make improvements on those processes that we've already worked on. Again, they will have a community of practice where they can learn from each other, those monthly calls. As I mentioned, they're also using Axiom to connect to Banner. And so that's really important because we're going to be working on their admission application to begin with the spring 2024 applications that will open in August of this next year. And so this gives you a sample of like the inquiry form for TCAT Memphis. Again, the campus tour scheduling that's made really easy. And here you can see where a list of the programs available at that TCAT. So they can select, have the list in mind of what they're offering, the days that are available for tours. And that's an example from TCAT Elizabethton. And then another example here from TCAT Jackson, specifically for the practical nursing program, because some of the programs have specific tours that they do. And so this allows them to set up a 30-minute appointment with the staff. So those are some examples. This is an example of the dashboards and the analytics behind the scenes. So you can see for January, the number of event tours and appointments. The staff can see what the results are, how many actually registered, came, attended, and then canceled. Also the different form requests. So again, those inquiry forms, any follow-up surveys, group tours, they can see the analytics for that. Each campus has access to see their own data. And then we can see that, of course, at the system level as well. And this is an example from Vol State. What's really exciting about this is, of course, we always hear all the time that students don't open emails, but they have some evidence that they actually did open a particular email. So this is an ability to track like how messages are resonating with students. And so on their dashboard, they can see how many are sent, delivered, opened, how many clicks they get, how many bounce back. So again, this is giving them much more useful information as they think about the marketing strategies that they use to work with prospective students. And this is really providing some great data that we didn't have access to before implementing this product. And this is an example of the text usage. So again, this is a feature that Slate offers to our TCATs. And I will just say, you know, this is not only the received messages, those are the messages coming back from students, but it tracks like individual messages we send to students. So that's the ad hoc messages. How many group messages are we sending? That's the deliver messages. So again, we can see by category with the types of messages that are being sent out. And the cost is about 10 cents a message. So they can also see this is a really economical way to reach out to students through text messaging and get those responses back. And so this, again, is a way that our campuses can track student use of these of the texting specifically in Slate. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but I just wanted to let you know that we are well on our way and things are working very well with our implementation so far. And so we're really excited about this.
Thank you, Heidi. This is very exciting. What more do our board members want to know about this?
Any problems?
No, actually, I've been very surprised. A lot of times when you implement technology, you do have issues, but this has been very, very seamless with the implementation. I think it helps that we have a staff member that's devoted solely to this. She has that expertise and has gone through the training, but she, you know, helps our community colleges in this work as well. But no, every campus I've talked to, they are thrilled with this software. I think we've made a really good choice here with what we're doing for a CRM.
Oh, Heidi. Sorry, I had muted myself. What does success
That's okay.
look like? What does success look like with this system?
You know, for us, it's going to translate into just more students completing the application process. We have a lot that start, don't finish. I think the outreach that we can do to students directly customized is going to be very helpful. And it's going to be much more efficient for our staff because of the individual contact they have to make with students.
I see a hand up, but I'm not sure whose it is.
This is Danny. Hey, Heidi, this is great, and I'll tell you, have I got feedback?
Have you what?
Am I getting feedback?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, because Heidi, you had some, must be on my end. But as I have navigated, I've been a Tennessee Achieves mentor for the whole time, and I do run into students that if we had had this, it would have made a world of difference, because instead of it just being everybody's the same kind of thing, they're not. And particularly, you know, I've got a child that is moved here from Iran, and she's trying to get, you know, there are details where they need special care. And some of these really solve some of those problems. And I guess I see it because I'm dealing with 6 students every year and have to walk them through. So this is just really, really important. And there are more needs for this than it might be obvious in terms of things that happen and just, you know, walls that get put up because the communication is different and difficult. So I'm very excited about this.
Thanks, Danny.
Great feedback. Anybody else? And apparently Mariah texted me. It may be my computer with the feedback, so apologies. Anything else for Heidi on this good work? Chancellor, anything from your end as you've watched this?
I'll just say that we have the opportunity yesterday to present this information to Brandon Gibson and her team out of the governor's office, to which they were pretty excited about what we are doing as well. We've also had some good conversations with THEC with regard to the possibilities of growing this particular product. So pretty exciting work. And I cannot say enough good things about Heidi and her team and the motivation that they've given to the colleges and support to help them do this. It never would have happened.
Great feedback. Thank you. Well done, Dr. Lemming. We'll look forward to you keeping us posted. With that, also under academic policies, let's turn to Assistant Vice Chancellor Hollins. This material was given to us in our packet as a read ahead. So Tashaka, take it away and fill us in on this policy change you'll be recommending to us later this month.
Thank you so much, Chair Reynolds. Good morning, all. So as Chair Reynolds stated, in your materials are details regarding revisions to Policy 2030105, academic retention and readmission at TCATS. And on behalf of TCATS Memphis, Morristown, and Nashville, this policy revision is intended to align the academic standards for the Aviation Maintenance Technology Program with FAA minimum passing score requirements for licensure. This policy has gone before the appropriate subcouncils as well as the President's Council and has been approved with all of those groups. And so I bring it before you all today for any discussion. I'll turn it back over to you. Chair
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Well, I have one very quick question. As someone who's not always keen about getting on an airplane, although I certainly respect the good work in the industry, the FAA only requires a C in aviation maintenance technology? That was stunning to me.
And so the letter grades are really academic related. I think I'm getting feedback on my end now. But the letter grades are academic related and not really a FAA standard. But on the grade of a 73 is what the FAA requires for their licensure pass rate. And when we equate that to our grading scale within the TCATs, that's a C.
Okay. I know at these three institutions, we're encouraging our students to do better than a 73 or a C. So
absolutely.
There you go. So any other questions for Dr. Hollins on this? All right, you'll be seeing this again then at the March meeting where we will be looking for your approval in this realignment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Some other policies coming our way. Dr. Reed, you have a revision for us.
Yes, good morning, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, and members of the board. In your materials, you will find information for revisions to policy 1.03.04.00, which is focused on governance, organization, and general policies for divisions TCATS, Community College, and System Office. The key updates to this policy is one, we simply streamlined the general language and made sure there was inclusion of TCAT language throughout that policy. We also removed any references to university that was in that policy. The third area is that we clarified the selection process and annual notification for community college faculty representation for the faculty subcouncil. In that area, we clarified that each community college will identify a faculty representative to serve on the subcouncil based on their own college's established faculty governance process for electing or identified representatives. Also, in that same area for faculty at community colleges, we clarified that even at the college level, if they're selected for a multi-year term, they must provide annual notification to the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. We also clarified the timeline for selecting the chairs of both the Academic Affairs and the Faculty Subcouncil, and so that will be done annually during the July meeting for both subcouncils. And the last update was clarification on the number of TCAT faculty representatives, and that faculty subcouncil will have 6 TCAT representatives according to their process for identifying reps from the grand divisions. These revisions to this policy were voted on and approved at the Academic Affairs Subcouncil on January 25th, the Faculty Subcouncil on January 27th, and at the President's Quarterly Meeting on February 22nd. And I'm happy to take any questions on those revisions.
Anything for Dr. Reed? I guess I was just a little bit surprised that we still had a policy with a reference to universities. So I thought we had kind of closed that gap over time, but maybe that one just got away from us.
Maybe so. It just hadn't gotten on the radar. And so I think we've got a pretty good update across the board, but it was one that was lingering. It still had university language. So
good update. Anything from the board? Once again, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, it'll be in our materials again, but try to take a look so we can be ready to make this change at our March meeting. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Brian Lapps, you are bringing before us a new policy on mass communications.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. This is really a policy to just kind of make sure that everybody is compliant with what most community colleges are already doing. And could you advance the slide, please, Carol? And that is to make sure that there is a limited ability to use all emails, replies to all, and those types of things. So what we're trying to do is preserve the usefulness of mass emails by limiting both who can send them as well as the subject matter. But we're being very flexible for the colleges and not requiring any specific way to do it. They can have a policy, a process, a procedure, or just even a semi-articulated understanding as long as they're getting it done. Next slide, please. So there's a definition of mass communications. It is mostly email, but it is not exclusively email as we see with texts and other types of communication. It is probably going to affect mostly internal communications, but it certainly does include external groups such as alumni, prospective students, and any other outside groups where we have lots of information and the ability to send mass communications. But it's not so broad as to prohibit departments from sending emails or communications to each other. The college can approve almost any kind of communication it wants to, as long as it's appropriate, as well as, it's not a mass communication if you've elected to receive something on a listserv. Next slide, please. We specifically say mass communications are appropriate for the safety and security notices and the other alerts required by the Clery Act, which is designed to provide for campus safety. Information that's important to the college, changes in policies and procedures, as well as anything essentially that the president or designees deem appropriate can be sent. It's really just, next slide, please. It's really just meant to try to rein in the random communications that should not be sent, such as those things that are personal in nature, not related to one's job duties, commercial, unless it's related to the commerce of the college, political solicitations for unsponsored activities, and anything discriminatory or otherwise in violation of policy. Next slide, please. Like I said, there's a great deal of flexibility for the colleges. They just have to implement something to make sure that they're limiting who can send it. The president has large authority to decide who can send them and then work with the CIO to be responsible for the implementation. So I believe that's the final slide other than questions.
Was there something that precipitated this need, or is this good hygiene?
Yes, there was an event that precipitated to make sure that every college was not allowing a reply to all. So most are not, and most have not been doing it for a while, or actually wasn't a reply to all, it was an all employees email or all staff email maybe that then got circulated. But so we're making sure that that does not happen again more broadly.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? All right, thank you. Hopefully we'll be prepared to take action on this. Knowing it already has the support of the President's Council is very helpful as we consider this.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Brian. All right, you guys, item 5, personnel and compensation. 2 years goes very quickly, and remarkably enough, it is already time for us to pick up once again the Chancellor's biannual evaluation. Today, I want to formally assign the task to Regent Powers as Chair of Personnel and Compensation as we begin this process. And April Preston, I hope, is on, and she can keep me honest on this in case I have any snafus here as I go through. There is a role for all of us to play in this, and the board's participation is critical. In about mid-April, the Chancellor will provide us her self-evaluation. Those of you who have been through this before are familiar with the process, but we all have to dust off our memories since it's been a little while. Her self-evaluation will cover 2 years, 2021 and 2022. With that, we will reach out to receive your feedback in an evaluation survey, very similar format to what we saw 2 years ago. We looked at it to see if we needed to make any nuanced changes, and our general evaluation was that this is still very pertinent to everything that's on the Chancellor's plate. So these are appropriate measures. Her presidents and executive staff will receive an evaluation form as well. The deadline on that will be the end of April for you guys to get that back to us. And no worries about writing all these dates back today. Obviously, you'll receive a stream of messages with regard to this as we move forward. We'll have a draft report for everyone's review for our review in about the middle of May. We have some external conversations that will take place with those, particularly in the state legislature, who work closely with the Chancellor and the team. And then Regent Powers Committee will review the evaluation at our personnel and committee meeting in June. And with that, the board will take formal action on the Chancellor's biennial evaluation at our June board meeting. Those are the highlights. To Regent Powers and April Preston, is there anything I am missing or any comments you all would care to make about this?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you're a little croupy today, so I didn't want to put you on the spot. But thank you for taking on Personnel Committee and this task. So I look forward to working with you. April, anything else?
I'll look forward to working with you as well, Regent Powers. You've covered it wonderfully. Thank you.
Sorry, I guess you guys were getting feedback. Mariah keeps muting me, and I'm like, what's wrong with this computer? Anyway, thank you, April. You're the one that got us prepared and will get us moving on this. So we are grateful. But reminders, there will be some deadlines on this. And again, we need everyone's participation in this important process. Chancellor, let me pause there and turn it back to you. We've made good time this morning, but let's talk about this exciting March meeting schedule.
Absolutely. We have made good time this morning. In your packets, you did have the schedules for the SOAR itinerary as well as the March board meeting. We're looking forward to seeing everybody at SOAR on March 28th and 29th at the Nashville Downtown Sheraton. This is a new location for us. And at the TBR Central Office on March 30th for the board meeting. Mariah will continue to keep you updated on details of the March meeting with a release of the materials and a schedule of the events for your review closer to the meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It's an exciting month. It'll be a great night at SOAR, and then we'll continue our celebration at our board meeting the next morning. Chancellor, do you have any further comments before we adjourn our committee chairs meeting?
No, other than, again, to thank everybody. Looking forward so much to SOAR. And again, as you all remember, this is where we announce College of the Year. So the competition is heating up. Everybody's getting anxious to see who that announcement will be. So we look forward to it. Can't wait to see everybody. And Kim, as she said, we are considering this an all-American celebration at SOAR this year. You're going to hear a very patriotic theme, and we are encouraging everybody to wear their best red, white, and blue to the SOAR dinner. So start thinking now about your best red, white, and blue.
Exactly. Thanks for the heads up. It's always helpful to have a little time to work on that. So
thank you for everyone for shopping.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So you guys, we move into audit. Regent Burdine, do you want a 5-minute break since we are running ahead?
Fine with me, whatever you think.
Why don't we, I don't want to take too long because I love running ahead, but we are running ahead, which is a wonderful thing. Let's come back. It's 9:28. Let's everybody come back at 9:35 Central for audit. That gives us a quick 7-minute break, and we'll start rolling again.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. See you guys in 7. Don't go far.
see if we have returned. Regent Apple, are you on? Regent Kastner?
I'm here, President.
And I'm here too. This is Mary Lou.
Thank you, Regent Apple. And Regent White, are you back with us? I believe he might have dropped off. But we do have a quorum. I'll check with Regent White to see if he's going to join back with us. But we do have a quorum to proceed.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the Audit Committee meeting to order. And Mariah, can you call the roll, please?
I'll be glad to. In accordance with TCA 844-108C3, there are 2 questions that need to be answered by regents for the record. First, can the regent simultaneously hear and speak with others participating in the meeting? And second, is the regent alone in the room? If the answer to both questions not alone, should identify any other people present in the room with the regent. When I call your name, please answer these 2 questions. Regent Apple.
Here and yes to both questions.
Chairman Burdine.
Here and yes to both questions.
Regent Kastner.
Present and yes to both questions.
And Regent White. Mr. Chair, if Regent White does join at a later time, I will make you aware if you may need to answer those 2 questions for us. I'll now check to see if other regents might have hung on to the line. If you could please answer those 2 questions when I call your name as well. Governor Lee, Regent George. Regent Gill, Commissioner Hatcher, Regent Hooper.
Here and yes to both questions.
Regent Long, Regent Powers. Vice Chair
yes to
Reynolds.
both.
Thank you, Regent Powers. Vice Chair Reynolds.
Here and yes to both.
Commissioner Schwinn. Regent Shelton.
Here and yes to both.
Regent Smith. Regent Spurgeon. Regent Garland. Regent Watt. And I'll circle back. Regent George, are you on with us? I see your name, but I cannot hear you if you're here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your committee is assembled and you have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. This meeting is being held electronically as it is the most economically efficient way, and the matters to be considered require timely action and review by the Audit Committee. Given the necessity to meet electronically as a non-controversial and routine item, I propose that the necessity be adopted by unanimous consent. Anyone who wants to have individual votes on necessity to meet electronically should feel free to object, in which case we will have a roll call vote. If there's no objection to the necessity to meet electronically is adopted, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the necessity is adopted. And turn the microphone over to Mike. You have our attention.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. Good morning, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor Tidings, and I want to welcome Regent White and Regent Kastner to the Audit Committee. Great to have you both aboard and be talking to you again in the near future on that. Also welcome Regent Hooper to the board. Glad to have you also in here today. We're going to start this morning with kind of a financial aid focus. Some of our external miscellaneous reviews want to cover some highlights there. First Volunteer State had a National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators Standards of Excellence peer review this past year. That's by invitation. All of our community colleges are having similar reviews, but wanted to highlight theirs at this meeting. The review had 44 recommendations, which sounds like a lot, but those are relatively minor. There were no systemic problems that were noted, and the reviewers noted that these should be relatively easy fixes for the college, and that they are typical of other peer reviews that they have done. Really a lot of housekeeping type things. They also noted 8 strengths in the report, most notably very strong financial aid staff, as well as experienced and dedicated leadership in the financial aid office, which are important foundations to have, especially in financial aid. So that was good. Also, the TBR Office of Student Success is working closely with the financial aid offices as they go through these peer reviews to sort of develop best practices and policies to help across the system sort of learn from previous reviews. And so that's good information to have. Just to cover a few of the recommendations in the report, I won't go through all 44, but to kind of give you an overview, a lot of them dealt with consumer information, and that's been a focus, I think, of shared services in working with the colleges as a whole. But some of those recommendations included that the cost of attendance information was provided, but it was not broken down in sufficient detail. The annual FERPA notifications needed to be updated. The annual net price calculator needed to be updated from the previous year. They would prefer to see more readily available faculty directory information on the website. And we've noticed that at some of the other colleges, when you go to look for a directory, sometimes you have to dig for it and find a directory to look for faculty and staff, and they recommended that be more readily apparent on the website. They also noted that written materials related to financial aid, in some cases, were missing the word federal in referencing Title IV aid, and that they should say federal Title IV financial aid instead of just Title IV financial aid, those type things. And also want to note, in related to these recommendations, TBR and the campus financial aid directors are developing new system-wide policies and procedures that will help cover a lot of, most if not all of these areas of the recommendations. But again, wanted to kind of give some perspective to the 44 recommendations that gets your attention, I'm sure, and wanted to kind of give sort of the degree that we're dealing with there. And I think Vol State's in good hands there from the financial aid office, it sounds like. So the next one is also a financial aid review. TSAC had done a performance program review at TCAP Murfreesboro for 2021-22. There were 4 issues noted that are, again, easily correctable. 2 issues with 2 students whose documentation had not been scanned to their student file. The TCAT had the information on hand. They just needed to load that to the student file, and they have worked on a spreadsheet through Teams to help them more in an automated manner get those documents updated as they come in. 3 students were incorrectly certified for 2 terms due to the spring-summer term crossover and the way that Banner had processed those. Again, shared services is adjusting a Banner script to make sure that those are distinguished and it doesn't affect students' eligibility. There's no negative impact on the students. It's corrected, and that's something that shared services and the TCATs have been aware of, and so that they're looking for those things. So again, a minor adjustment there, and we think we've got a process in place or coming that will keep those issues from happening in the future. The third one was in verifying residency, the TCAT relied on the FAFSA information, which is student provided information, versus independently verifying state residency status, excuse me, per policy. Again, TBR is working on looking at that policy and how the TCATs can verify that more readily. There was no negative impact on the students. It's more of a processing concern there. And in 3 dual enrollment grant recipients received incorrect amounts. No negative impact on the students, but Shared Services has adjusted the dual enrollment grant award process and calc rules in Banner to keep that from happening again in the future. So, TSAC accepted TCAT Murfreesboro's responses and closed their report. If there are any questions on those 2 reports, I'll be glad to answer those at this point before moving on.
And Mike, Regent White has joined us, so Mariah needs to ask those 2 questions.
Great. Thank you, Regent Burdine.
Regent White, could you please answer our 2 questions? Can you hear and speak with others participating in the meeting, and are you alone in the room?
Yes, I'm here. Yes to the 2. Obviously, I should have someone here to help me with connecting to these meetings, but apologies for that.
Glad you could be with us. And I also see Regent Varlin has joined. Regent Varlin,
Yep.
do you also mind answering our 2 questions?
Okay, yes and yes, and I'm alone in the room.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. And Regent White, in case you missed it earlier, again, welcome to the Audit Committee. Glad to have you. Been a familiar face in our meetings over the years, especially in person. So I'm glad to have you formally on the committee.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate being included.
We'll continue with Comptroller's Office audits for TBR colleges. First, no findings. Roane State's Foundation's audit for 2020-21 had no findings. Reports with findings, Roane State's community college audit, as opposed to the Foundation, had 1 finding. And as noted in prior 2 audits, the college did not perform adequate collection procedures for accounts receivable. This is a case of, I think the college is trying to get things squared away there, especially in the last audit period. They had developed new policies and procedures during the previous audit period, but because of the timing there and it being close to the end of the year, some of the old accounts receivable were not cleared up in time for the next audit to start. It looks like they've got a good process in place, but this finding, and auditors noted that they had made progress with it, but the first year, 2020, because of the lapse from the previous audit, just a timing issue kind of caught them, and we think they'll be good going forward for the next audit period there. It looks like they have a good process in place to clear those accounts receivable issues. Northeast State also had a 2020-21 audit with 1 limited official use finding that we can discuss later. Next, I wanted to highlight some internal audit reports that begin on page 33 of your materials. First, we've talked about these audits in the past a little bit, but Northeast, Chris Hyder there is the first one to get his in, but he had done a HERF 1 student distribution audit. No findings or recommendations. It looked like the distributions were in compliance with the appropriate guidance, and all the students that he tested met the eligibility requirements there. So that is the first step. You'll get more of these audits coming forward. There are several in place now that are ongoing, but glad to have that first one out of the way and see that we didn't have any compliance issues. Kind of tells us that Jonathan Button and student success people, we were on the right track in planning how we handled the HERF money, and so that's good news. Hopefully, more good news to follow from the other college audits there. Next, in your materials, we'll cover this a little more in detail in section 3, but the internal audit quality assurance self-assessments will be covered a little bit later, but those are in your materials. Most of the other internal audit reports did not have any significant recommendations. Just wanted to highlight those, especially the HERF audit. But if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those on any of the audits in your materials. Seeing none, I'll move on to recommendation and finding logs. Again, making good progress there. I've had to have only a few meetings with vice chancellors on some of those that were stale, but do want to recognize, keeping my fingers crossed, we received a draft report yesterday from Motlow, and it looks like some of their older recommendations will probably be cleared. It's not showing up in this materials because Tammy just finished that report and sent us a draft yesterday, but hopefully they made good progress there. And I know that's some of the older ones that we've been concerned about, and hopefully those will be off the logs here soon. But any questions on any of the recommendations or findings in the materials? Thank you, Regent Burdine. That's all I have off of that section.
Thank you, sir. This is an informational item and requires no action, so we'll move on to audit reports and reviews. The external miscellaneous review summaries beginning on page 16. Comptroller's audit report summaries beginning on page 26. Federal audit report summaries beginning on page 30. And internal audit summaries beginning on page 33. Items on this section are required to be reported but may not need further discussion. But does any board member have a request to pull any of these and discuss them? Anybody have a request? All right, hearing none, this informational item requires no action, so we'll move back to Mike for system-wide internal audit updates. Mike?
Thank you, Regent Burdine. First, on a sad note, want to recognize that Tammy Wiseman, our auditor at Motlow, has submitted her resignation. She'll be moving on to the Defense Department Audit Contract Agency. I don't think I have those in the right order, but a great move for her. We wish her the best, but we're really going to miss her. She's been great to work with, extremely smart, extremely efficient. It's going to be hard to replace her. Tomorrow is her last day, so I have a draft report out there that I need to hurry and get back to Tammy before she leaves with comments. But we're working with Motlow in developing the announcement for that position and working to help them fill that going forward. But we hate to lose Tammy. She's been here quite a while and has been a great asset to the system as well as to Motlow. Want to recognize Tammy, and Tammy, thank you if you're on. We appreciate everything you've done over the years. Next, want to cover the quality assurance review, external quality assurance review. We are required, for those who have not been on the audit committee before, just in short, we're required by state law to follow the international standards of the Institution of Internal Auditors, and that their standards require that we have an external quality review every 5 years. Our last one was towards the end of 2018, and so our next one will be this summer. As part of that process, we are also required to do 2 self-assessment reports within that 5-year period, and the second of those is in the materials today. We'll talk about that again a little bit further, but we bring in an external team, and for us, for our system, we kind of look different than most of the other higher ed systems out there. We're sort of a group of one-person shops, but I think we've got a good team coming forward for this review in July. Jana Clark, some of y'all who were around then for our last review may remember Jana. She was on the team for the last review, and she will lead the team this time. She's from Kansas State University, has done a lot of reviews, and we're glad to have her back because she kind of understands what we look like in our system, so that certainly helps make that process a little smoother. Martha Winiger from ETSU, who's formerly with our system and is familiar with us, has agreed. Save us a little bit on travel, having Martha being somewhat local to cover the colleges. And then Katrina McNair from Georgia Southern University, who is also a small shop, and glad to have her also. Again, no community college representatives, but we do have a staff from small shops and who have great experience with quality assurance reviews. So glad to have that group this July, and we'll be providing more information to you as we go forward on that. The other item I wanted to mention is TCAT Veterans Affairs audits. We have talked about that in the past, and TSAC as well as the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs have been doing reviews at the TCATs, and so we're covering the ones that haven't been covered. I think there are about 6 left, and we've assigned community college auditors to help cover those, so we can do that a little more expediently. Those are ongoing now, or some of them will be starting here pretty soon, but want to let you know that's on our radar. And from the previous audits we've done, we've had a lot of good best practices rolling forward with those. So I think those will be good audits. We've kind of learned from previous mistakes over the years, so we should be good there. And Regent Burdine, that concludes our internal audit updates. Regent Burdine, you're muted.
Oops. Thank you, Mike. This also is an informational item, requires no action. So we'll move on to university updates, which can be found on page 49. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you. As many of you know, the comptroller's audits are presented for the locally governed institutions, the former universities and universities that were formerly under TBR, Austin P, Memphis, Middle Tennessee, TSU, and ETSU. We are required to cover them for bond financing purposes, and so therefore we present their financial compliance audits when those come around. Tennessee State University had a financial compliance audit that was published just before our last audit committee meeting, so it was not in your materials for that last meeting. And so that's presented here so that we covered our fiduciary responsibility there and presenting those to you. TSU's financial compliance audit for 2021 had 3 findings. One was that management had not ensured processes were in place for significant financial transactions, as noted in the prior 4 audits, including not sufficiently performing bank reconciliations. The second one was that management allowed a breakdown of internal controls that resulted in errors in the financial statements, as noted in the prior 6 audits. And lastly, the university personnel did not perform adequate collection procedures for accounts receivable, as noted in the prior 4 audits. Again, those that came out right before our last audit committee meeting, so we did not have that in the materials, but again, wanted to present that here in terms of the financial compliance audit. As you're aware, TSU also recently had a special report by the Comptroller's Office. The Comptroller's Office of Research and Education Accountability did a review related to TSU's enrollment growth, housing shortages, scholarships. They covered some other things there. The report covered about a dozen different matters for legislative consideration that really ran the gamut from enrollment planning and budgeting to governance issues. I don't want to go into a great detail there, but again, for our responsibility, we want to present that audit information. It was presented to the Senate Ad Hoc Committee to review the management and operations at TSU on February 23rd, and then they had a sunset hearing for government operations joint subcommittee on education, health, and general welfare on February 27th. And that committee recommended a 1-year continuance of TSU's governing board. So that will go through the legislative process going forward. That was a recommendation there, but again, no further impact for TBR, but based on our responsibilities, we wanted to present that information also. Regent Burdine, that is all I have on university updates, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All members were giving the items that are on the consent agenda previously, and we'll vote on them at the end of section 2. But does any member want to have any item pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. On item number 2A, revisions to fiscal year audit plans are on page 55. Nothing significant or unusual there to bring to your attention. That information is in your materials. Those are all pretty standard changes that are typical that we have seen over the years. For item 2B, review internal audit charters, for background information for our new members, each community college has an audit charter that is signed by the auditor and the president. And as we have new presidents or new auditors, we revise those and have those submitted. And so Northeast, their new audit committee charter is in your materials. No changes to the content of the charter, except that President McCord has signed that one. No substantive changes to the charter. That is all I have for section 2, Regent Burdine.
Thank you. We'll move on to 2B, which is a review of internal audit charters on page 74.
Okay. My bad, Regent Burdine. I jumped the gun on that one, but
okay.
So that was Northeast revised charter.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. So we're now, this section requires a roll call vote. Do I have a motion from one of the committee members?
So moved, Mary Lou.
Thank you. A second?
Second, it's Tom.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, will you please take a roll call vote?
Regent Apple.
Aye.
Chairman Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Kastner.
Aye.
And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Move on to section 3, review of internal quality assurance self-assessment, page 79. Mike, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. I've touched on this a couple times already. It may be familiar to you, but we present the reports in a separate section because that is so integral to what we do and important for our certifications. I mentioned this is covered by the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing, and all of the self-assessment reviews are in your materials starting on page 79. The program we do, I want to give some credit to our quality assurance committee. They have done a great job, especially the last time around. Our group of auditors in 2018, we really kind of started from the ground up and did a lot of work there that has served us well going forward, and it has made this process much more efficient and smooth. Makes the reports easier to do, but again, this is something that's very important for us. The objective is to determine if we are generally compliant with the standards, and recommendations or areas for improvement don't necessarily mean that you're not compliant. There are always going to be gaps. Every internal audit shop is different. Everybody's going to have different things that they can work on to improve. If you were around for the last review, we had several recommendations for improvement, although we had a great review then. Our general conclusion is that we generally conform with the standards based on all the reports submitted. There are a few opportunities with potential to improve, and I'll cover a few of those, just sort of the most common ones that we see. And this includes our office. Increasing access and exposure to technology-based audit tools and data analysis tools. We're always a little behind with that in learning, but we want to be able to use Banner and other Excel information in our audit processes. We've come a ways since our last review, but there's always room for improvement there and training so that we can get better with that. A couple of colleges noted that their offices would like to raise awareness of internal audit and risk management through the college, and so they're going to take an active role in presenting more information to leadership teams at the colleges there. And then we also had a couple that had recommendations that they communicate results more timely to allow management to take the information they need and make corrective actions in a more timely manner. That can be difficult to do, as you know, our community colleges are one-person shops, and for them to make sure they have their work papers right and their reports right and send those to us to look at, it can be difficult to do that as efficiently as you would like, even in the best of circumstances. And I think they all do a great job with that. But there's always room for improvement. You always think I could have done this more efficiently next time, or get these things out more timely. So those are really the common ones that we have seen across those reports. And those are pretty typical for shops of our size also. Again, those are in your materials. If there are any questions about that process or those reports, I'll be happy to answer those.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, may I ask one quick question of Mike on this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the reference that you made, and it's noticeable, obviously, in looking at these with regard to technology-based techniques and data analytics and tools. Mike, do you guys have all of the resources you need, or is this something that that needs the board's or certainly the chancellor's further attention?
Well, in a perfect world, we might have more IT auditors, and Chancellor Tidings and I and John Cleese and I have talked about that in the past. Going forward, that's an issue. John has had consultants come in. Any audit shop is going to tell you we need more IT people, and I understand that and understand the budget constraints and all those issues. That being said, Don is doing a great job getting to the community colleges and covering some of those issues and helping with those. We brought Jackie Struckmeyer in this past year, who has a lot of banner experience and a lot of data analytics experience. So happy to have her, and she's really boosting us in the right direction. There are some software out there that we have that I think Jackie and Don and I can take better advantage of. But in this case, there's nothing I can say we need to grab that software and purchase that and bring that in. We tried the internal audit software for a period of years, and it just did not really work for us in the way we're set up, and probably was more inefficient than efficient, even once we got a handle on that. But again, in this day and time, you can't throw too much at IT and information security issues. But ideally, we'd like to get to a point where we can cover all the community colleges every year. And again, that can be problematic with only one person doing the IT information security side. So that's certainly something we can look at in the future, and part of my sort of long range planning there. But great question, Regent Reynolds, and I appreciate that. Hope I've answered for you.
Thank you so much. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years since we had this this assessment. I remember sitting in the conference room not far from here with Regent Griscom for our exit interview. Right. So I know this will be equally well done. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions, comments? This also was for your information only and requires no action. So we are at the end of our agenda. Any further business to come before the public session? Hearing none, the public session is now adjourned. So immediately after adjournment, public session has concluded, but the non-public session is going to start. And you should have received information on how to get back on board and access to the agenda. Thanks, everybody. See you in just a minute.